Welcome everyone to Sustainability Live. This next session is slightly different as we have a roundtable discussion on the topic of sustainability evolution in data center industry, from linear to circular. Joining us for this session are Chris Pennington, Director of Energy and Sustainability at IRM, Famida Bangaert, VP of Sustainability IT Renew, and Susanna Cass, Data Center Advisor to UN SDG and InfraPrime BOD. Welcome, everybody. How are you?
Wonderful,
Great.
Scott. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Wonderful to have you all here. Now, Chris, I'm going to hand over to you first because I believe you're going to kick off this discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. It's a really great opportunity for us to take a moment and think about the evolution of sustainability within our industry, which has happened over an incredibly short period of time. So just first, a little bit of background. Iron Mountain Data Centers operates a portfolio of both hyperscale and co-location facilities across 3 continents and growing. So similar to other data center providers, our footprint just kind of gets bigger and bigger, reflecting just this global push towards digital transformation. And it's really impressive to see how far we've come as an industry in a really pretty short period of time. As an operator, if we think back just 10 years ago of what our key performance indicators were, they were very much focused around uptime, physical security, infosec, maybe temperature, and that was it. Data centers existed as kind of this obscure business industry out there that most people were not even aware of, let alone really understood kind of how they operated. Fast forward a few years though, and all of a sudden it became clear that data centers have a presence, and I think that's partly just because of how much we've been expanding, and the way that we measure the business and the way we think about our impact started to change. Starting with clean energy as an example. So in really short periods of time, the data center industry has gone from kind of obscurity to being one of the largest consumers of clean energy globally, and making renewable power available broadly to the communities in which we operate. That's a massive amount of impact in just a short period of time to go. And today we're buying gigawatts of clean energy on an annual basis. And then even taking that one step forward and saying, now companies like Iron Mountain Data Centers are starting to say, how can we actually make sure that every single hour of every single day is met by locally produced clean energy? So this trajectory of like going from not an issue from energy standpoint to solving it and leading by example is taking off and setting sail. Another example is energy efficiency, where PUE's been important, but there's been over 500% increase in compute capacity with very minimal amount of total energy consumption. So energy efficiency has gone way up. So that pursuit is taking path and continuing to move forward. More recently, we have awareness of water constraints and water concerns in some of our markets where this is a really critical resource. And so here again, we see identify the problem, develop new technology solutions. We have low water or zero water based cooling platforms that are coming out. And so here again, this another trajectory of evolution that's just going off and really helping to make a huge positive impact for our industry. I'll give one more example, heat reuse as an example. So taking the heat out of our facilities and trying to find alternate solutions for those. These enhancements and evolutions are happening very quickly, and it's very exciting to see. And I think it's being largely driven by some of the largest hyperscale operators in the space that are recognizing that our impact on the planet is important, and they've got the resources and the tools to invest in some of the leading edge technology. And it's also being pressured, kind of raising the bar from down below by governments and local communities saying, look, we are concerned about the natural resources in our communities. We want to make sure that data centers can be a positive impact, not just simply a drain on resources. So lots of evolution happening very quickly, all going very much in a linear fashion and getting great results. So I think, as the old saying goes, what got us here may not get us to where we need to go. And I think there is this opportunity around the idea of circular products and circular solutions that represents what the next stage or piece of the next stage will look like. So a couple of examples here. Our data centers have robust power systems, and how can we find ways to not just be energy consumers, but integrate with the local grid and find ways to positively contribute by enabling more renewable energy to come onto the grid, maybe storing that energy or consuming energy when renewable resources are most available. So this interaction, this kind of two-way street between data centers and electricity grids, is just one example of how we can kind of move from this linear kind of taking and consuming to something that's much more beneficial and benefits both the data center itself as well as the community around us. Another example is just that waste heat that I mentioned earlier, which we're starting to see. How can we take this resource that's available and use that to contribute towards similar type of beneficial solution? So we've done an amazing job of making real progress as an industry. A lot of the solutions we have had, though, are been very kind of linear in nature. And I think the opportunity for us to consider how we break this kind of take, make, waste standard practice and find ways to preserve materials and actually do so in a way that contributes back to the efficiency of the facility in the first place is kind of the real opportunity that's a hand that's going to get us to the next level. So with circularity in mind, I might turn the spotlight to my co-host here, Famida, who I think has some experience in this space in particular.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for such a nice introduction. Yeah, I would love to double click on the circularity concept a little bit more as you teed up what's been happening and what is the current trend today. So I live in the world of circularity quite a bit and evolved really from the traditional sustainability thinking of the environmental benefits, social benefits, equity benefits, and of course the economic benefits, the traditional triple pillars. And it's been really interesting to see how the data center industry has really caught on. And I believe there are three reasons for it. And so let me kind of double click on that one. One is out of necessity, really. We have to grow, the economy has to grow while decarbonizing at the same time. So that is a lot of focus on the growth of products and services in the supply chain that already exist, but also saying, how can we now decarbonize our products? How can we decarbonize our services in the supply chain? And how can we do so in a responsible way? And circularity actually ends up being the natural answer because it designs waste out from the system. It's one of its key principles. It keeps materials in the loop in its highest form through reuse, recycle, and of course, assuming that it's repaired and refurbished first through certification processes. And then it gives an opportunity for regeneration of the natural systems in the way. And you mentioned sort of the take and the dispose in the end, and those two then go away through the virtue of circularity. So it's a natural evolution because we have to grow and decarbonize at the same time, facing the realities of a changing climate. The second reason, perhaps, that the trend that's really influencing is what to do with the current inventory of IT equipment. Data centers are huge consumers of global energy. Data centers yet are the backbone of the information communication technology. So it's a necessity that has been there and will continue to be there and continue to grow. But what about all the existing inventory? Research shows that in the coming years, the global hyperscalers will decommission more hardware compared to the top 5 or top 10 original equipment manufacturers combined. So what to do with the existing equipment that after a short repair are actually in good condition, have the ability to access the secondary markets and others. So to create a process around that, to make them ready for reuse, secondary reuse, tertiary reuse, anything we can do to keep them off of landfill is really a virtue, and not just a good opportunity and the right thing to do, but it's a great economic opportunity for the economy. So it's here for practical reasons, the circularity trend. And the last but not least is, the growing understanding and appreciation for ESG, environmental, social, and governance policies, metrics, and measures for the company. We have to close and connect the dots between the zero waste goals and the net zero carbon goals. And it's really through the eyes of circularity that the data centers in the information communication technology industry can bring the two worlds together and march in the same direction, so to speak. So we're seeing this trend in the data center industry. We're seeing this design for circularity experiencing a great uptick. And I would love to kind of come back and talk more to it in coming minutes. But thank you so much for the setup. And I know Susanna Cass is very well versed in this world of sustainability, circularity, especially in the data centers, being advisor to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So Susanna, perhaps you could shed some light on this too.
Thank you, Fahmida. Thank you, Chris. I listened to both of you, and it's very inspiring regarding the mission and the results that both of you are leading in your role. So thank you for doing what you guys do every day for the industry and for leading it forward. So hello, everyone. My name is Susanna Cass. I'm actually dialing in from the Silicon Valley, California, USA today. I'm a computer scientist. As an energy fellow at Stanford University and also a member of the Climate 50 for consecutive years now, one of the more important things that we all do is similar to what Chris and Fahmida talked about, is we drive results and we measure ourselves. If you have a goal and you can't measure it, it's kind of hard for you to be able to compare and to learn more about your accounting. So in my role as a data center advisor with the UN SDG program, I engage with private sector in the data center industry, cloud providers, and more importantly, the clean energy pioneer, such as Google and Microsoft, who have been taking this journey for at least 30 years in the data center world. And then we have latecomers coming in, but they definitely have made an impact, such as Amazon, Facebook Meta now, and Apple Enterprise, and of course, the companies that Chris and Fahmida work for, which is IT Renewal, Iron Mountain, just getting bigger and better in terms of organic and inorganic growth to expand the ecosystem. I personally have worked with financial services sectors such as Goldman Sachs for over 15 years now in the data center world, and including academia such as the Johns Hopkins University, of course, Stanford, which is actually where Fahmida and I alma mater, but other really great universities. Chris mentioned about the work that he did with the electric grid providers, which is really important. My fundamental belief is if the grid is all 24/7 green, we're done. At least we're halfway done, 50% of it, in terms of don't have to worry about the carbon-free energy that will provide the baseline for the IT load. Then we can work on the other stuff that Fahmida talked about in terms of reuse, recycle, regenerate, all the R words. But I like the one word that actually not an R word, is actually upcycle. So we'll come back to that in a second. My aim is to foster research and collaboration in my data center role in goal setting, such as the carbon neutral pledges that you heard about all the company have been making, frankly, during the COVID or before the COVID, which is very encouraging to hear. But the recent tally we just did with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in short, IPCC, the results are not that positive. That means that if every carbon neutral pledge are fulfilled by the head of state and a corporation that has been declared, and note that many of them do not have a specific action plan how they're going to deliver those pledges, but assuming we think everybody is good, they just basically have the plan, but maybe didn't communicate to us. We still fell below keeping the 1.5 degrees Celsius pre-industrial level. So what does that mean is we will be expecting to see more catastrophic weather impact that we all have been seeing around the world. I make a plea today. The reason I'm here today is for all of us to come together in this sustainability journey to recognize the trend is not trending positive. So the climate crisis is actually, frankly, here today. The stability of the Earth's climate and the physical manifestations of the changing climate are increasingly visible across the globe. And hence it has socio-economic benefits are being threatened, including human lives and also animals. So the greenhouse gas emission must be handled, must be counterbalanced by removals. And I really like to see more detailed results and work with you all to determining how do we handle scope 1, which is the direct consumption. You can do that by actually stop using fossil-based fuel and using clean energy. Scope 2, which is basically the environment that Chris mentioned a little bit earlier about the cooling aspects of it, the environment. So the leadership that he basically talked about doing heat recovery is extremely important. And thirdly is actually the supply chain issue, which Famida talked about in terms of the material. A flashback for me working at eBay as a COO for international operation. 1/4 of the auctions that we transacted in 1 quarter exceeded 1 year volume of the classified ad. Now, this is a test for the audience to actually identify what age group you are in, if you even know what classified ad I'm talking about. For those of you who remember, Chris actually may remember, but that is just a guess. I don't think my daughter has any clue about what I'm talking about. Another global trend, which I do want to bring that in, is the following. IT Renewed and Iron Mountain is opposed to China. It is amazing how they have grown exponentially through inorganic growth and then organic growth. We are all experiencing a digital transformation. I'm going to quote one of my clients. The Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said in the last earnings call, we have seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in just 2 months. When I go back and take a look at the tally with McKinsey just last couple of weeks, the past 4 months of digital commerce transaction have matched the same business volume of the brick and mortar for our past 10 years. We did that in 4 months. So Chris is not going to stop building data center around the world. I've done 17 countries. I've done 3 gigawatt, and Chris is a lot speedier, a lot more effective than I am. He probably can do it in less time than I did in the past. So the importance of the business drivers and the green growth and the principles that Famida just talked about in terms of circular economy starts now. We must think about throughout the life cycle, and I cannot be more excited in terms of taking part in this journey with you. One of the key things I'm actually working on is to capture all the emissions in a carbon network system, reusing the CO2 as an energy carrier to provide district heating and cooling to harmonize with the community. We have actual production going on right now, and it's doing really well. So I hope that we can actually drive more deployment. The second thing I'm actually also working on with the group is to make sustainable bill of material. It is indeed true. There are zero embodied material that can be used in terms of data center and infrastructure bill. And I really look forward to working with Famida and maybe Ellen MacArthur Foundation in terms of bringing out this Circulytics to you and get you be part of the journey. With that, I think I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Famida and Chris, for you to expand on the key points that you actually started this session. So thank you.
Thanks, Susanna. You spoke very passionately about the need to act urgently on this and the climate crisis that we're all facing. Famida, I want to go back and maybe have you help me kind of connect the dots here a little bit, because I think most people, including myself, when I think about circularity, I think about the physical nature of material and resource management. Both yourself and Susanna talked about emissions, and so what's the role of emissions reporting with helping to accelerate the circular economy, I guess, is where I'm trying to close the gap in my mind.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That is the big mystery and the big solution. It's kind of where the work is, where the body of work is ahead for all sustainability professionals in this decade of climate action is, first of all, the premise of connecting the dots between the two worlds, circularity and the carbon accounting, is in the greenhouse gas emissions protocols themselves. Today, the protocols primarily address and very boldly explain the scopes 1s and the 2s and the mitigation and how all that come together. But the answer is actually in scope 3. Scope 3 is the carbon accounting of how an organization exists in the supply chain, all its upstream, downstream transportations, its asset base, its product footprint, construction and design, materials inflow and outflow. So the scope 3 for an organization, however small or large and however webbed in this world, will have to be accounted for. And then when circularity happens, which really gives a boost to reuse, refurbishment, repair, and giving an item, again, whether it's a component level or rack level, a second, third life, how do we account for that? So there's avoided emissions. It shows up as part of avoided emissions in sort of the net zero carbon accounting. If we use reused products, we are no longer accruing the embedded scope 3 carbon that would have shown up for the second user and for the third user. That is not connected to the GHG protocol today. That is not codified, understood, or given credit to. So that's why I think this is a very exciting line of work of research, and many consortiums are actually actively looking at it. The Circular Electronic Partnership, the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, Open Compute Project and Foundation, they're very aware of this gap and therefore an opportunity in the carbon accounting world on how to make, head and tail of this. But long story short, it shows up as avoided emissions if you go fully circular. And that's just the carbon benefit. There is the economic benefit, of course, in being able to expand the business and able to create equity and access in parts of the world that are still not online. And of course, bringing a certain level of equality and use to the products that already exist in the data center, which is one of the fastest growing energy user in the entire carbon equation. So a big believer of opportunities. And I think this is where we're going to see tremendous progress and innovation and thought leadership for us.
Yeah, got it. So breaking that linear cycle, recognizing the value that these reused materials could bring certainly brings business value, but then is almost like the carbon benefits in my mind is almost like a bonus. I mean, first of all, you've got to be able to track your scope 3 and have that represented. The circular product solutions bring absolute business value today. The ability to slash scope 3, which is likely massive for many organizations, is really kind of the complementary piece that completes the whole value proposition.
Yeah, it's almost very generically applying to sort of the ways of the world. There's prevention and there's cure. The best is to prevent from further carbon to accumulate. But if certain products and services are already in place, let it be part of the solution. So at ITRenew, we like to say the energy isn't the only renewable resource. Any ICT product that's out there and is part of the data center inventory, they're all renewable resources. They're all functional. They can be reused. They can be resurfaced and composed in solutions, high-end technology solutions for other companies. So it's a mindset. I think amongst us, when we were talking about, if circularity is so cool, why isn't it happening and being adopted everywhere? It is an institutional mindset. It is also an individual mindset. And circularity is one of those ways of thinking and ways of doing that not only connects us between the decarbonization commitment and the zero waste world, but also allow us to look at products and services very differently in a more dynamic way. What's already in there is already a renewable resource, and it's a great philosophical liberating point for I think the growing businesses. What would you say, Susanna? Is this the trend you see in your world of kind of policies or mechanisms that you advise?
Oh, thank you. I agree with many of the points that you made. To plead it just a little bit differently is data center is a life cycle, right? Okay, so we start with design, site selection, we do the build and construction, we operate it, and oftentimes we actually expand, but most of the times we actually do decommission the older data center, meaning that we create a lot of, we take it down because they basically reach the end of life. The specific part about Scope 3, the way that a few of us in the research and the scientific world working with a hyperscaler is we focus on the build part, because we integrate with the life cycle of the circular economy that resources are generally being depleted out from the environment. So if we don't have to do the depletion and the extraction for the resource from the planet, that is a good thing, because we can do all the hours in terms of upcycling the material, and we basically design to disassemble before we actually build. So specifically about the material, what we basically are working on is net carbon storage material, Chris. So effectively what we do is we come up with a sustainable BOM, which we data center call it a BOM, stands for bill of material for anything that we're actually going to build, because working with client like Goldman Sachs, everything is basically standardized and referenced, so it can actually be easy to be able to monitor and measure it and compare. So specifically, what we've basically done is during the build cycle, Famida, what we basically do is we measure the embodied carbon first before we even consider it in the sustainable bill of material. Kind of your concept to avoid it before it actually happened. So we plan a sustainable bill of material, and that is so different than what I've actually have done, build 17, across 17 countries, over 3 gigawatt, working at eBay or being the general manager for HP data center. Is we did not think about that way. We didn't even ask the question in our RFP in terms of what material you're doing. We just assumed that we're going to use concrete, aluminum, and steel. And at the moment right now, we are absolutely looking at, first of all, do not remove any resources from the environment. That's a good thing. That's a very important practice. Number two, when we build this bill of material, we are thinking about and using only sustainable BOM, not the conventional. And then the third thing we do is we design for disassembly. So we think about the decommissioning before we actually do the build. And throughout the whole way, if we cannot avoid the emission during the build, we remove them, we capture in a carbon network, and we use the CO2 in the emission as an energy carrier to provide district heating and cooling. So those are all the practical pillars that we're actually doing today.
That's great.
I'm really sorry, guys. Me appearing back on screen, the ghost of Christmas future, means that it's time for us to wrap this session up, unfortunately. So I just want to say a really big thank you to the great insights and conversation we've had today from Chris, Famida, and Susanna. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, stay tuned. We'll be right back with the next session.